You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 364, Marchion Ro. Jonesy corrected me on that earlier this week. I didn't know. I was reading the book, hadn't heard how it was pronounced, hadn't really been paying attention, but apparently it is Marchion Ro. So tonight we're going to break down, going to do a character dissection of sorts and try to get into the head of Marchion Ro, talk about maybe what we know about him, even though it may be a little bit of nothing. I think there's enough there that we can actually start speculating on a few things. And we're going to pull from the comics, the book, and a couple of books actually there. So to help me do all of that is none other than Mr. Jonesy, sporting the 10th anniversary Cantina Cast shirt, I might add.
Yeah, pretty sharp, man. You did a great job on this. I like it a lot.
I was excited. I had that in my head for about a whole year before I actually did anything with it. So
you're right on time then. I mean, it's just like anything else on this network. You got a great idea. A year or two later, let's do it. Probably.
Yep. Let's try to do it. So how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man. And the whole Marchion Ro, I think I sent you a message. I'm like, holy smokes. I had no idea. Thank you, Republic show. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to make you spit out your coffee.
Well, it's funny because you sent me like the phonetic spelling of it as well in the text message. So I was like, Marchion Ro. Okay, got it. Which I think makes sense because I think we're going to touch on the name here in a little bit, right? Marchion being a real word and coming from the word marquee, but more on that later. So let's jump into this. We believe it or not, we've got a lot of show notes. Well, thanks to somebody, but because I think I went a little overboard. But Jonesy said it's fine, so it's fine. But we've got some news. We're gonna get to the news, and then we're gonna get into all the Marchion Ro stuff. So let's jump into the news first. And
there was actually news this week.
Yeah, a lot of it.
We haven't really had any news since the Disney investors call.
That's right.
I mean, of this kind of scale here.
Yeah, it's been like little sprinkles here and there, but nothing of this sort. So, I mean, this is kind of a big one, right? They opened up the can, if you will, on the Kenobi series. And we've got a lot of actors here. I know there's been a lot of discussion about it. Anybody jump out at you besides the obvious, like, Ewan McGregor and that little guy named Hayden Christensen?
Yeah, there's a couple. So Moses Ingram is really interesting. So she was in The Queen's Gambit on Netflix. And what was really interesting, though, is that on Instagram, she teased us a little bit saying, I play with lightsabers. And so, yeah, I mean, interesting. Do we have more Jedi or is there something else going on in this or, maybe less than Jedi?
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting. So, I mean, it starts opening the door for speculation about what Kenobi will be about. Is Obi-Wan out there looking for other Jedi or other Jedi trying to find him? And, where do we see this? We know Vader's involved already. So it kind of would make some sense that we might see Vader, tear down some other folks. And I think I'm on board with that.
Yeah, me too. There are a lot of people in here that I noticed that from other shows, which is a good thing, right? You always kind of want, there's a lot to be said about casting up and coming people, folks that didn't really have a lot of spotlight. And I would say some of these folks are probably definitely in that category, even though they are recognizable and they've had maybe one or two shows under their belt now that have been, interesting or at least have gotten a lot of attention. But I've seen Kumail is like,
dude, he's all beefcake now.
He's all, I think what is he in?
Eternals. Yeah.
Eternals, right. Mm-hmm. But I think the best one that I've seen so far is him as Kitster. And do you think they would go that far to bring him back as Kitster? Because I don't know about that one.
Kitster was a boy. I guess he would be no. I'm just going to go with no.
No?
Yeah. I would say why, but goodness knows. Who knows what. I don't know. I'm going to have to put faith in Deborah Chow and the writers on this one. I think the other one, if you want to go into like the Star Wars trivia type of thing. So Indira Varma, who was her lover in the TV show Game of Thrones? Who was the actor?
I don't know.
Pedro Pascal.
Oh, really? I didn't watch Game of Thrones. I think I've watched like 5 episodes.
Yeah, she was Ilaria, I believe, and he was Oberyn. And spoiler alert, Oberyn got his eyes gouged out.
Thanks for that. Appreciate that.
It was a love story. Yeah.
Yeah. They always end really well. All right. We'll probably continue to dissect this a little bit further There's
hey, the other cool thing. I'm
sure,
sorry.
go ahead. No, go
This
ahead.
is right. No, this is right up the basement alley. O'Shea Jackson Jr. You know who that is, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, oldest son of Ice Cube.
He
So
looks like him a lot.
he does. Well, he played him in Straight Outta Compton, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there's people in here that have been in things. I mean, these are people that are up and coming. Even Benny Safdie. I mean, these are people that are known in various circles. So it's interesting that we've got names that aren't marquee names, I guess. See what I did there? They're not Marchion names, but right. But they're still known. They're still a bit of a known commodity, even if they're still relatively early in their career. So I like that balance that they've struck with this one.
Yeah. Let's talk about this thing. So we got a lot of news actually on Star Wars: The High Republic. There were some character concept reveals. So, for example, Sylvester Yarrow, she'll be coming out in Out of the Darkness. Was that July?
Out of the Dark
in July.
Yeah, it may have
August.
Did that one get pushed back? I can't remember. I don't know. I think it's in the fall. I don't know that they've actually released a date.
Fair enough. Yeah. But that's good. We got to see the Beast at the Nihil ride. You can see a Nihil riding right there. So
you're going to take a stab at pronouncing it?
Yeah, the Bogaranth.
There you go.
Yeah. And it's got the Bogan kind of vibe to it, which I thought was kind of cool since, dark side Bogan.
And it still inspires like the old Rancor type of visual of it all.
Yeah, I want to see how do they wrangle these things and just to what end do they use these for? Right? I mean, are these like their ATs or AT-ATs for those of us that are older that they ride into battle or something?
Right. When they're in these battle arenas. So it's almost for like sport or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Are they going to be able to use them for something else beyond that? Which would be a pretty terrifying force if you're on the ground without a lot of weaponry.
There's finally some concept art, or I guess some official art now for Affie Hollow. So she is one of the main characters from Into the Dark, so Claudia Gray's book. So that was really cool to kind of see her fleshed out literally. And then same thing with Comac Vitus. He's a pretty interesting character. He's struggling with a lot and has been struggling with a lot for a number of years. But yeah, he's actually a really interesting character. He grows on you in that book, Into the Dark. But yeah, cool to see him. And then we got this, which I thought was really exciting. A final official picture, of what's the name? Lorna D.
Lorna D herself. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is cool. This is like right out of Aliens or something.
Oh, dude. And she is such a badass.
Yeah.
I mean, just her whole look. I mean, and that artwork is just fantastic too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. This is the, what is it? This is the audio drama from Kevin Scott, right? Yeah. Tempest Runner.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so this one's coming out in the fall and we don't really know a whole lot, but this is going to give us some back history on Lorna D and kind of her rise through the ranks and some of those types of stories. So it should be really interesting about who I think is probably the most interesting. I mean, probably hands down the most interesting Tempest Runner there is. And of them, Nile, of course. So we don't know a lot of them personally, but her and Marchion are. I got to be honest, she was as interesting as Marchion there for a while, until the end of Light of the Jedi. And I still think there's a lot to her, and I think she's going to play a rather huge role in Marchion's overall schemes here. It's going to be really cool. So I'm really looking forward to this one. And again, I like audiobooks, so audio dramas are a lot of fun. Full cast, I'm assuming, but they haven't said that specifically yet.
Right. Yeah, there's I've got a crazy headcanon theory that I'll share with you guys later. It's probably not real. It's not going to happen. But it comes back to this Tempest Runner, and it comes back to something that Marchion Ro says to Lorna D in Light of the Jedi, which I think was alluding to this, but I've got a longer theory that is really wacko that you'll enjoy. So start getting the tinfoil out now for that one. Let's see. What else did we get? Was that everything in here? We got some covers.
Oh no, my friend. We got some, well, I guess it wasn't in that post, but we got some Life Day Treasury compilation of stories. Yeah, here we go, man.
Yeah. I like that picture though of Stella and Geos. That's really cool.
Yeah, Stella and Geos right there on the side of the building in the rain. For those who are listening, it's a fantastic one. You can see all this out on StarWars.com.
I think he's supposed to be in Coruscant, right?
I believe, yes. So we're going to get a Stella and Geos show. This is a collection of stories, and while it's a holiday book, it's more about like the season, I think, and kind of that feeling of it all. So we get a Stella and Geos story. We're going to have Ewoks in the snow because we need cutesy stuff. Supposedly, there's going to be a story about Chewie's family in there. I don't know how real that is. So this comes out September 7th, though. That you can go out there and pre-order it now. I didn't look and see how much it was, but they didn't really give us a whole lot outside of all of that. But the Stellan Geos picture appears to be what's going to be on the cover. At least that's kind of what's been leaked so far. So we'll see if that sticks.
Yeah, this is in line, I think, with the Tales from the Dark Side, the
Vader's Castle,
myths and fables, right? Those kind of stories that are maybe rooted in some myth, rooted in some fact, I guess, if you will, canon, right? So
yeah, well, and George Mann, and George Mann is the one who did this with Cavan Scott, and he did. Oh gosh, what was it? He did Myths and Fables, and he did Dark Legends, which you really liked.
Yes,
and of course, Grant Griffin's artwork on this is just fantastic. You know, he really nails Star Wars. His style, it really captures Star Wars really, really well. Even these cutesy little Ewoks, they don't look so cutesy. They look a little ragged. I like it.
So this is
thank God they did this.
Yeah, and you can't really. I mean, we're not doing any justice really if you're watching, because this is going to be a massive sprawling visual infographic that they've created, but they've really laid out all of the characters so far. Well, not all of them. Most of the characters from the High Republic, some of the more important ones, some of the ones that have some level of focus on them, including obviously the main characters themselves. And you can kind of see the relationships as well. So it's kind of a big family tree, family portrait, right, of the High Republic, which is really great. I mean, this is an awesome, like, going through this, I'm like, oh yeah, it starts to really help put the picture together for you.
And this is where all the pictures they've been releasing, either on the High Republic show or just online on StarWars.com, it really helps when you're reading the book to be able to get that visual, even the concept art. It's so important because you can lock into that image, and every image they paint on the page, you can then insert the characters. I also like this is where the comics really help you out too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know not everybody's into the comics and that type of deal, and I get that, but just to be able to look at them and see who these people are, it really does help. And to have this kind of cheat sheet, it's super handy. And there's another one with the books, I think, overlaid at the top as well, if I recall. So there's even more another type of this character sheet infographic. Yeah, that one right there.
Yeah, when I click on it, I think you have to go this way. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yep. So there you got infographic with the High Republic books, kind of timelined all over it, and I think even the comics there.
Yep. Nice. I like the deceased box because that's going to continue to grow.
Oh, too soon.
No, it's true though. It really is. Let's talk about this one though, because this is really good stuff here. Who did this?
This is by, oh my gosh. So Christoph Vacher, or it's Vacher. And I believe you can get this through, it's called Until Our Last Breath. And for those listening, it's this fantastic picture of Leia in her white, kind of a robe outfit, but it's inspired by what she wore on the Tantive. But she's got her blue lightsaber lit, and it is her hilt. And there's this beautiful kind of sunset, snow-banked mountain behind her with a Star Destroyer that looks like it's crashing. And she's just staring at you. It's fantastic, though. I
mean, honestly, the Star Destroyer, you get captivated just in her look, right? You don't really even realize the Star Destroyer is kind of looming in the background, eerily. But yeah, this is great stuff, man.
It's so good. And I believe this is available over on Acme Art.
So it's available to buy.
What's that?
Yeah, you're saying it's available. You can purchase this right now.
Yeah, you can go buy this. You can go buy the print. And it's fantastic. And he has a website. You can go out there and look at all the other things that he's done. He's done things for Transformers and a bunch of other things. So he's a very well-respected artist, but fantastic. At the very least, we'll have the link in the show notes, Mike, please. And you can go take a look. It is worth your time.
Yep.
It's really fantastic. Especially if you love art. You will fall in love with this instantly.
Cool. Yeah, that's really great. Okay, let's get into our.
So we got to acknowledge Bad Batch came out this week. The trailer.
Yep.
So we wanted to acknowledge that. We are going to spend more time on that next week, just to make sure we have time to get through what we want to tonight. So stick with us. We will do a little bit more. Maybe not necessarily a whole dissection of the trailer again, but we'll have some fun thoughts.
Hey, you never know.
True. 4-hour show. Here we come.
4-hour show
for a 2-hour trailer or 2-minute trailer.
2 minutes, if that. All right, let me. I've got a little. I brought a little something to kind of show for this one, so I figured it would help as we're kind of sitting here talking about Marchion Ro, and so just bear with me 1 second while I find that. There we go.
Live television, folks.
Yeah, we're doing live television. We'll just edit all this out. Can you see that there? Yeah, that's good. All right, so this is finally let's get into episode 364, Marchion Ro, and let's start with the end. Let's start with the end of the show. So
we'll work our way backward.
Hold on, guys. Sorry, I wanted to start with this. All right, here we go. This is all going to get edited out. Don't worry. We are professionals here. Okay. So this is, as you guys know, we are celebrating our 10th anniversary of being on the air. And this is a special bonus show that we're doing called From a Certain Point of View. And we're actually going to record our second episode tomorrow. So we've been talking about it with Dante. We had to push it back for something that happened last week. Not a big deal. But we had to push it back 1 week. So he's been just chomping it. I mean, he's literally in the blocks. I think he's just been waiting there for this to happen. So we're going to hit this show tomorrow, record that, and it'll get released as a bonus show. But we're going to be talking about Force Visions. So more on that tomorrow. So please join us for a live recording of that if you'd like to join in. And certainly subscribe to the podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get to hear the audio sometime next week as a bonus show. So pretty excited finally getting him on the air and being able to voice all of his thoughts and opinions, because the dude's got a massive brain on his head, his head. All right,
we're hitting all the marks tonight.
Yeah, it's a rough show. We haven't done this in a while, right? No. Okay, so what I thought we'd do is, I guess, so let me just start with a kind of a general question to you. Like, for me, Marchion Ro was probably the more interesting character of all the characters, maybe with the exception of my girlfriend, Avar Chris, right? It's almost like they're almost like the Ray and Ben Solo for me right now. And then it's real early. I mean, there were only 3 books in, right? So it's kind of hyperbole that I'm saying that, but I do get that feeling like they were the standout characters, and it just happens to be a light side character, dark side character, male, female, that kind of thing. So the similarities probably end there. But for you, for Marchion Ro, like, what was it about him? Besides the obvious, maybe it's just the obvious, but what was it about him that really kind of appealed to you?
Well, I think it's just a bit of mystery. I mean, and by the time you get to the end of Light of the Jedi, I mean, you just realize how nasty and how conniving this guy can be. Mm-hmm. And he has a plan. And I think one of the cool things about him is that when people have a plan, they think that it has to be very structured, it has to be very disciplined and outlined. Marchion is while he has an overall plan, he's got this path. If we want to talk about Force Visions, this is the river of the Force, basically. And so it's all flowing in the right direction, but how he gets there, he'll seize the opportunities as they come. And so it's like, it's a bit like Grand Admiral Thrawn a bit, at a very light level. I'm not trying to compare the two because we don't have enough material to really make that comparison, but it's similar in style a bit, but not as calculating, I think. But just his ruthlessness, and he's very unassuming. There's a lot of things lurking in the background, and it's just, those characters are always, the mysterious characters are always more interesting ones. What jumped out to you?
Yeah, I think all those things. And I think it was really just, I mean, Charles Soule planted tons of little one-liner nuggets that for people like me, people like you, probably anybody listening to this podcast, you just latch onto that, right? Your mind starts thinking all these million different things about what it could not possibly mean, and trying to connect the dots, right, immediately. And that's essentially what this show is going to be. We've gone through and pulled out as many of the nuggets as we felt like we could talk about and felt we wanted to talk about from the books and the comics that really kind of help paint the picture, or at least give us a canvas to paint and speculate upon for his background, where he came from, and potentially what he could be doing. But the interesting, I guess, the more appealing aspect of him was just he had all this deep history, and he kept dropping these one-liners and all these little hints of things that had happened in the past. And you start to realize they've really put a lot of thought into all of this. And now I'm more interested to see how all of that connects together and what his whole story is, and how soon are we going to get that story, right? Is it going to be a slow drip, or are we going to get a big bang with a whole lot more to come down the road? I just don't know. But I think that's all the intriguing piece of it for this character for me.
Yeah, and I like that they've brought him into the comics, so you get a visual of him in the comics. And again, this is the overall thought process of Project, what was the Luminous, right?
Yeah,
was to bring all these stories and have some sort of connected tissue between them all. And they're doing a really great job of that. So I was really excited to see him in High Republic Adventures. There we go. I don't know why I have such a hard time saying that. So this is the younger comic series with Yoda in his little sabbatical. from the council and whatnot. So I was really happy that they're not just limiting him to the books, because I think if you do that and you don't give them any kind of gravity in the other material, then you lose sight of that a bit. And we know that the High Republic comic is going a little bit towards the Drangir right now, which I think is necessary, needed. But it's good that we're not losing sight of the Nile, and we're not necessarily getting to a partnership or anything like that, which we expect to happen at some point. But yeah, I'm glad he's in. I'm glad he's in more than just the books, right? We don't want to limit the characters; they really need to be prevalent everywhere. And so far, they're off to a good start with that.
Yeah, and I think what you're maybe not directly saying too is, when you have a main character like this and you throw he or her, them into a comic book, it lifts the comic up a lot more, right? There's more value, more weight to it. It certainly has a bigger looming presence in the overall canon. It's not just a throwaway story that it's just a comic, right? No, there's actually stuff going on in here, and he's a part of it.
Right, and there were a couple of interesting tidbits in issue 2 of High Republic Adventure we'll talk about tonight.
Yeah, we've got them highlighted here. So, and I meant to get the credit for the artwork here, but someone actually did this. I thought it was a pretty good piece here. But this is a visualization of what he looked like. So, he's got that slate gray skin, the dark hair, the black, almost pupilless eyes, almost like a shark kind of eyes. He's not human. He's a humanoid. We know that. We don't know what race he is yet. There's probably some theories that we've got around that. But, his whole look here, and then the look that you see on the right-hand side, especially with this the blaster rifle, which we'll get to here in just a little bit. But he is a very interesting character. He almost does come across as a young Thrawn, right? You think about that Thrawn comic, and he had the long hair, and everybody was freaking out that was actually Thrawn, and what he went through. But yeah, it's kind of the same vibe that you're getting here. But yeah, I do like the character design so far. He definitely stands out, and I think it was repurposed from something. I think it came up in the High Republic show, but they didn't really divulge where it came from. My guess is it came from the Cloud Riders would be probably the most logical link, but maybe it's just a Sith that they created, or a bad guy for the Kanji Club group or whatever, or somebody who knows where this came from. But it is a character design that they've repurposed from a while back. Let's talk about his look here, because he's got two looks, right? He's got the one that we know of going into Light of the Jedi, and then he has that kind of transformational point in the book where he sheds his old skin and dons a new skin of sorts, considering it's his dad's helmet, I think, and his dad's cowl there that he's wearing. But on the left-hand side, we're showing the one that we're all used to seeing. He's got the kind of the red helmet with the eye. It's got these kind of like side horns going out there. And on the one on the right is the new look that he has now after post Light of the Jedi, and in the comics where he's now got this kind of a rounder mask with the swirl, right? The hurricane symbol, or the swarm or storm, I guess, if you will, on the front of the helmet itself. But it is interesting. I actually like the look on the left more, like his original look. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it is interesting, because it almost seems. But so the more I thought about, because we talked a little bit about this before the show. Mm-hmm. So the helmet that he's in now is more kind of medieval style, or even semi-Mandalorian type of style, even though it's got some hoses that hook up to it. But the swirl, and he's where he looks out of is the eye, and it's actually shaped like an eye. Still, it doesn't glow red; it doesn't appear. But I like this. I mean, the cloak, the fur coat that was his father's as well. It just looks like he's taking things back to a more primal type of state, and we're starting to see that. We were talking about ruthlessness earlier, and I think that's kind of visualizing some of that, and so I kind of like it. It does seem like a backward movement, though, but I don't know. Then again, he's when we read in the book, he was trying to escape things from his past, but that's not possible. This is maybe a visual reflection of some of that.
Yeah. So let's before we go any further, let's talk about the blaster rifle. Like, we've seen this blaster rifle come up a number of times now. He's not used it in anything that I've read yet. He's certainly seen carrying it in the comics, and I'm guessing that's probably where we're going to see it, since they keep drawing covers and variant covers with him using it. But what stood out to me was the fact that he's got a yellow light on it, and we know he took Ludin's lightsaber. And so I'm starting to wonder if this somehow is powered by the gem, by the jewel. If he took the jewel out of there, or the crystal, and is now has it in his rifle and is powered up this rifle that he's had that has gone unpowered because he needed a kyber crystal. And maybe that's why he said he was looking for a Jedi. I mean, there's probably other reasons other than just the kyber crystal. That seems like it'd be kind of easy just to maybe kill a Padawan or somebody and take their kyber crystal. But I just find the colors to be the same, too coincidental. So maybe there's going to be something there. But that would be neat to see. We saw Jocasta New, right? She had that. It was probably the first sign that we got that you could power something like that, right? With the kyber crystal. But there's a precedence that's already been set. So who knows? Maybe this is old Jedi tech or Sith tech in some way that allows a rifle to be powered by a kyber crystal like that.
Right. I mean, he's been very elusive about some of his comments. What, again, we'll talk about here in a minute. Mm-hmm. So is that possible? Now, I thought we had some visuals though, just to be the devil's advocate here, where I thought when he was talking to Mari one time, he had it looked like a yellow, more like a glow rod rather than a weapon. And maybe I'm visualizing it wrong in my head because I don't trust my head like that. But I thought I remembered something there, but maybe he was just using his rifle or something. Maybe I'm just misremembering, but
I have to go back. Yeah, I don't remember that, but you
it is a cool idea though. Yeah. I mean, we get a little bit different style here than what we saw in the comic book too. So at least maybe it's just a different angle.
Yeah. And I think, so we'll come back to this as well, because, we're going to talk about possibilities of where he came from and what his family came from. And one other thing, right? The name itself, we were talking before we came on the air, the word Marchion is a real word, and shame on me for not actually just going out and looking. This is a real thing. Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. And it stems from the word marquis, right? So you think of kings, you think of royalty in some way. I think Marchion is supposed to be like the mistress, or no, yeah, not the mistress. It's the wife of a marquis, right? So okay. I guess a kind of a queen, but not with the royal lineage. But maybe there's something there. Maybe the name is intentional, and maybe he does come from some kind of ancient lineage of royalty in some way that were, bested by the Jedi, or crossed by the Jedi, or dethroned by the Jedi in some way. And we'll get into a lot of that speculation here, but there may be something in the name itself that kind of leads us down the path to his origin at some point.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about what we know from his past. And so what I'm going to do here is I've got a couple of different passages, and we'll kind of just follow up with some questions. And again, these are the things that really stood out for us from the High Republic, Light of the Jedi, the comics, Into the Dark. I don't think we have any. Spoiler alert. Sorry, he does show up at the very end of Into the Dark, but there's really not a whole lot there for it. But okay, so the first one I want to talk about was the death of his father. So we know this comes up several times in Light of the Jedi. He's, at least in his mind, he's convinced that one of the Tempests killed his father, right? They had something to do with it, whether directly, indirectly. And, he's kind of had this really hate relationship with him ever since then, which he finally carries out and does some, something to Kazov there to kind of put an end to him. But the quote is, and he's talking to Kazov here, he says, "You killed my father, didn't you?" Kazov hesitated. "Not long, but probably not long enough." "What are you talking about, Marchion? We're dying out here." "I don't know for sure it was you," said the Eye of the Nile, "but I'm choosing to believe it was. And if it wasn't, well, Lorna D and Pan Etia, their time will come." So the first thing that got me thinking here is, like, and again, this is all just fun speculation stuff, right? But do you think there's a storyline here where he killed his father and he's somehow trying to like rationalize it or convince those people that either that he thinks that they did it, and that's a fear for them because they know that they didn't, right? Or do you think he's justifying the death in some way, or saying, "You know what, I killed them, but you made me kill them," kind of thing? Because it feels like it could be that based on what he's saying here. He says, but I'm choosing to believe it was. I don't know. What, again, could be crazy talk, but what do you think?
Yeah, I actually have the similar thought of, is there some reason why he would be responsible for his father's death? But the circumstances of when he's talking to Kazov just don't make a lot of sense, though, within that context, because Charles Soule gives us this idea of Kazov is intentionally pausing, but he knew he didn't pause quite long enough before he jumped in with an answer.
Yeah.
And right, so there's something there, and again, why would he choose this time to do this when he's already decided what his vengeance will be in general? And is this the justification behind it, though? Is this the underlying driver, or is he just really pissed at Kazov because he's tired of his insubordination and he's tired of being challenged and tired of him failing in general,
Right.
especially at Iridu? And so I don't. There's so many. There's 2 or 3 different ways we could look at it, but I kind of like the idea though that he would be responsible, that Marchion would be responsible for his father's death in some way. But the way that it's written in the book, while it may give you maybe a little tinge of that, it continues to really highlight that it's probably not the case. As much as I might enjoy that, though.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. There's something too about I have to ask myself the question of, do I believe that Kazov killed Marchion Ro's father? And I think undoubtedly no. Like the way it was written and the fact that it never came up, and he was so like, what are you talking about? We're under attack here, right? I mean, it was very persuasive, at least in my opinion, the way I took from the book, that he actually did not have any idea what Marchion was talking about, and that he did not have her hand in it. So if there is some truth in that one of the Tempests did kill his father, that really only leaves Lorna D and Pan Etia. Pan, like, I can't even see him doing it. He seems so like, yes, sir, you're the best. I'm going to do whatever you tell me kind of thing. He's such a cheerleader. And then that only leaves Lorna D, which I definitely can see Lorna D doing it, right? I mean, they've kind of painted her as that kind of a character type. But I don't know. It just seems too simple, right? It seems like the natural selection would be somebody like Lorna D, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think
it's more here.
Yeah, my guess at the end of the day is I don't know that one character would be able to kill someone from the Ro family, and Marchion is critical of his father as well. But at the same time, it just doesn't seem like the Eye of the Nile would be that vulnerable. Now, maybe his dad got that lazy, or he just didn't see it coming, or he was just too content with the lifestyle. And he talks a little bit about this, but overall, it just seems unlikely that one would be able to do it, and it's not Palpatine creeping up on his master in his sleep or something like that, when the timing is right. These are just riffraff, maybe very violent riffraff, but riffraff, and how they would be able to take up the Eye of the Nile just seems a bit light for me. So there's got to be something else in there.
So motive then, right? So let's go to motive. What would be the motive for a Tempest to kill? I mean, it seems like the obvious would be kill his dad and take over controlling Santeca technology, Santeca paths, and do whatever they want to as the Eye.
Right.
Is that
it doesn't seem like they know about Mari Santeca, though.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So the Ros are the only ones that know what's going on. I was thinking about that too, though, Albert. Where I kind of landed of possibilities, and they're a bit cliche and a bit, tropish, but you take out the father, maybe you can corrupt the son, right? Or maybe they didn't quite know how the paths were linked to the Ros, and how the Ros were the only ones that knew how to, control them and plot them and all of that other thing. Maybe it was a learning during that transition, and they expected Marchion just to roll over and be more, or just to do more of the same. It's always something like that. It's always some sort of greed oriented thing, because it doesn't seem like, what was his name, Asgar or something like that. Didn't really seem like he did something wrong, or like something really that pissed everybody off.
They all held him in high regard. The way I read it, it took away from it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it just seemed almost like it was just a power move. It is the way it is on the surface. And maybe, again, that's very, cliche, but I mean, it's a thing. It happens. So, I mean, we see coups all the time, right?
Right. Okay, let's go to the next one here. It says, when my father died, I inherited a disorganized, broken organization. The Nile had power, but it spent most of its time fighting with itself. If it could never reach its full potential, and it had to, if it would, excuse me, I screwed that up. And it had to, if it would ever become the weapon I needed, right? My father tried to change things, but he failed, and then he was murdered. So he talks about the Nihil as being, at their full potential, they were a weapon. And we're kind of seeing that now, right? He's trying to get them to the full potential as a weapon. It looks like the Jedi are going to be somebody he's going after for personal reasons. And then we'll speculate that on that here in just a little bit. But, why the question I had really was, why was his father trying to change this? What was the purpose in trying to change things? And this probably stems from where they came from. And we're going to get to that here in just a little bit. Some kind of like the history of their father, him and his father, and where they, what they were trying to get away from, escape from, and all of that. But it was just curious to me as why his father was trying to change things there.
Right. It's one of these things of, sorry, I noticed Jessica from work. Hey, Jessica, popped in. I told her about the show today and she was super excited. So I appreciate you showing up.
Thanks, Jessica.
Right. Now I completely lost my train of thought. So thanks. But some of the language that you shared, though, you can start to see why we might think that Marchion was responsible for his father's death. Right. Because, he's critical of how disorganized it was and that it wasn't reaching its full potential. There were a lot of other factors that he thought were just disappointments that could be so much more. We're missing a piece, though, of what Asgar inherited or what he was building and what he felt like he had to fix. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he just couldn't do it enough. Maybe he didn't have the strength. Maybe he didn't have just the fortitude, to do it, or the will. Maybe he just didn't have the will or the interest. And he was just happy to sit back on his laurels, but he seemed like he had a vision for it. And Marchion was able to adopt that and then completely shift it and change it into something that he actually thought would work. And I draw another comparison like Palpatine, though. It's this look at the long game rather than just the short-term gains. And so Marchion seems to have this ability in order to, again, strategize a bit into the future where maybe his father didn't.
Right. Or, yeah. Like it sounds like he had bigger plans than his father did. Maybe he felt like things were going stale, didn't like the direction they were going in. Didn't feel like he talks about it being broken, disorganized. That seems like it's all feedback on his father. Right. So, right. If he feels like, hey, I'm the better person here and I'm not getting the credit that I deserve, then I need to get rid of him and I'll make it look like the Tempest did it. And then I'll step in and, start this grandiose plan to eventually just take over and become the one true leader, abolish the stupid system of, the rule of three, right? It sounds like that was the first thing that went out the door for him. So,
right. And again, we're going to talk a little about them running away from things here. And I think it's all part of it, because Marchion may have also been able to see that this isn't going to work because our conflict will come to a head at some point with the Jedi, with the Republic, with whomever, and that we have to change. Otherwise, we will not survive. We can't sustain ourselves like this and be just a misfit band of marauders. We actually need, while you can still be wild and stuff, we still need structure and control and a bit of a governance structure of sorts. I'm using stuff from work now, but yeah. So you need that, though, right? In order to make sure the ship is actually moving in the direction it's supposed to move, rather than it's just twirling in different circles and spinning on its chasing his own tail. And so I think some of that, when we hear what you're going to tell us about, what was his life coming from, I think will make a little bit more sense of some of that.
Yeah, let's do that. So the next line here is, and this is kind of talking about why him and his father were trying to escape the life that they were living. He says, and he's talking to Lorna D here. He says, I never told you much about my family, and I doubt I ever will, but I came from something I wanted to escape. This ship was part of it, actually, until it all went bad. My father and I both got out. We worked hard. We had a plan for the paths, the Nihil, for all sorts of things. Then he gestures at his mask and says, it was always going to be like this. Since the day I was born, I thought I escaped. I didn't, though. Not really. So the first thing that jumps out at me is like, what were they trying to escape? And for me, I think, I immediately go to like enslavement of some sort. That goes against the whole, is he come from royalty? Or maybe they were a long time ago and they were enslaved and again, overtaken by the Jedi or somebody else. And they were trying to get away from that lifestyle. But it sounds like they definitely freed themselves in some way. Other thoughts, like what do you feel like beyond that? I mean, what could they have been trying to get away from? Is it just the lifestyle? Was it under, being under rule of something? Was it slavery?
Right. And the second one actually is where I kind of go, and especially if we focus on the Jedi, and because it's clear that they have some sort of past with them, and if we're to believe that there's a past there, you could see where this was like an invasion type of thing, or while the Jedi with their altruistic beliefs and everything came in and completely disrupted their way of life, or it felt like subjugation as you're going the path like you're kind of going down.
Yeah.
So if you start looking at it from that, your paths are going to cross and it's inevitable. And so that was one of the ways that I started to interpret, though, was whether or not, there you go. I can't tell if that's a gun or not. Anyway, but that's one of the things, like you think you can get away from your past and you think you can do it, but at some point you have to confront it. And you're going to get to this crossroads, this intersection where you're going to have to confront your demons, and you just have to accept your destiny and your path. And that, even if we borrow from Luke, we're waxing poetic now, but the destiny of the Jedi is to, confront their fear, basically, right?
Yeah.
And to overcome it. And again, I think it's our own inner demons a lot in life. We're the only ones getting in our way. The only ones telling us no is us. And so it's just a mentality. And I think that he's finally come to terms with some of that, and running from the Jedi or avoiding the Jedi and those types of things. He knows that can only last so long, because if they want to take down the Republic or take down the Jedi, they've got to have an actual plan to do that. And maybe for a while he was content avoiding it, but now they're on his doorstep and he's seeking them out. And clearly they're front and center on his mind for his plans, because they know that they can, them and the Republic are very, very powerful.
Yep. So that gesturing, though, that's the one that kills me, right? It says he gestured at his mask. It was always going to be like this. So I take that as he's holding the mask. It's always going to be like this, right? Pointing at it, right? So is always going to be like that. Is it being hiding? Is it being masking themselves? Does it mean the lifestyle that they have of doing these kinds of guerrilla tactics where they're going and hitting and running, but never really becoming anything more than that? Living in fear, trying to stay under the radar, do what they need to do to survive and be profitable, but not, shed too much light, too much attention on them. I just, or is it they use the mass as an offensive weapon, right? Paired and coupled with gas. I don't know. It is interesting that that he finishes that sentence by saying, "I thought I escaped. I didn't, though, not really." So it feels like he's saying that they got away. Technically, right? They're no longer under the rule of whoever it was, or no one has them enslaved or chained in any way, but they still have to live under helmets, or they still have to live this lifestyle where they're not at the forefront of everybody. They're not the big threat in the galaxy. They're still kind of hiding in the shadows and, trying to be elusive and not reveal themselves.
Yeah. I think another way to interpret, though, is that him pointing at the mask, especially donning his father's, it was always going to be him that had to lead them into this next era. Like he knew his father wasn't going to be able to do that. Maybe he didn't have a whole lot of interest in that. He was maybe being okay doing the bachelor playboy thing and just collecting the riches and being happy for a while. But that's not very rewarding in life. But so I took it more as that he was never going to escape his lineage and really the things that he was meant to do, and what him and his father might have set forward to do when they escaped whatever they were escaping. And this is this is where that path has taken him, and it's time to take that step forward.
Yeah, I like that. I hadn't considered that one. The next one's a little bit about the family and how they learn to defend themselves against the Jedi. And this is when Loden tries to use the mind touch on him. He responds back. He resists it, but it took him off guard for just a split second. And he says, "It's not going to happen, Jedi. My family knew all about you people. They told me what you could do and how to resist it." So this is a really interesting aspect of it, right? Because now we know that he's definitely, right? Well, there's nothing that leads me to believe he's force sensitive yet, but he's definitely knowledgeable of the Force, and specifically of the Jedi and what they're capable of doing. And we get, something as direct as this, and very indirect things, commands that he's giving folks, and things that he does, in light of the Jedi being around. He's very conscious and very aware of who they are. And there's a great image that we're going to show here in a little bit that comes from the comic that kind of reveals some of this as well. But the idea that not only does he know about the Jedi mind trick or the Jedi mind touch, but his family actually learned how to defend against it, right?
Mhm.
So that's a level of discipline, a level of defense that they would have to put together purposely because they're adversaries of the Jedi in some way, right? Or at least they are the Jedi were a threat to them, or Force users. How about that? Force users were a threat to them. So I think there's a lot here that we'll speculate a little bit on what some of these origins could be. But your thoughts on that one?
Well, and again, if you look at his father's helmet, what does it remind you of?
Mandalorians?
It is very reminiscent of Mandalorian. So could they have been part of a Mandalorian tribe or something along those effects? I mean, that's the first thing that kind of springs to mind of, who is an adversary of the Jedi that would learn and know things that they would be able to pass down.
Right.
And aside from the Sith or from dark side users or something like that, but they don't appear to have any type of, force ability. So at least Marchion doesn't seem to, but do they have that being passed down? And I like the idea of Mandalorians kind of resurfacing, to be honest with you. I don't know that we need to make this a front and center thing, but for that to be his lineage, I think would be really interesting. And again, and you and I have talked about this of, understanding where these, cultures and these sects of the universe, where they come from and where they've been and where they were at in various stages of the timeline is super interesting, because you can manipulate that into a lot of different ways. And you could still remain true to it. Like the Mandalorian and the Jedi, while they were kind of side by side for a while, it's a clear history of conflict.
Right.
And this would be one more, example of that. And the Jedi and the Mandalorians had another big conflict as when he was younger, and this is what they were escaping. And again, you shared with us a while back about some of the histories of the Darksaber, right? And some of those stories. And I'm not saying the Darksaber is going to surface here, but why not? The Darksaber might surface in all of this, right? I mean, we're just throwing things against the wall here.
It's been around longer than the High Republic, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so does it surface again, type of thing? Now, we're not seeing it clearly, and you would figure if it was front and center, it would already be out there. But
right.
Again, I mean, it creates those thoughts and those memories, and I think those are okay. And I don't think it would be going to the well too many times, even though we have the Mandalorian right now, for them to do that, because again, some things are tried and true, and Mandalorian Jedi fighting seems like it needs to happen.
Yeah. It's steeped in legends, right? Literally. Mm-hmm. So there's okay. So now here's another one that's very interesting. Again, going back to the practices against the Jedi. This is something about imprisoning Jedi, and here he calls specifically one of his ancestors. He says, "My grandmother told me how to do it. She learned from hers. You don't imprison Jedi behind bars. You do it with pain. I never had a chance to try it, but it seems like it works well enough." And so for context, if anybody hadn't watched the Light of the Jedi series that we did or haven't read the book, he has Loden Greatstorm captured, right? He's in a cell, and I think there's like 6 other cells around him, 7, somewhere around there. And in these cells, he's got plain old people that he's just been torturing and suffering and periodically shocking. And they're all just in so much pain and in persistent pain that it is clouding the ability for Loden Greatstorm to really focus on anything, because all he can feel, because he's so in tune with the Force and so in tune with the light, that all he can feel is their grief and their pain. So that's kind of acting as a blocker. It's preventing him from doing things without exerting a lot of energy and literally force, which he's just not capable of doing because he's just been beaten to what. So but yeah, I mean, the idea that they've gone to the extent of something like this, right, of being this sadistic, and there's really no line that they're going to draw. His family doesn't know. There's no line they wouldn't cross in order to suppress the powers of the Jedi or suppress the powers of the Force. I want to make that clear too, because I'm starting to wonder too. They've talked about the High Republic era and the Force being at risk here, or some kind of a threat to the Force itself. And I'm starting to wonder now if they're, well, I know I'm getting ahead of it. We're going to have to jump back and forth here, but I'm starting to wonder too if like this family isn't so much Jedi specific, right? Maybe they're agnostic and it's really about the Force. And right now, they've got the Drengir, and he's aware of those now after into the dark. But yeah, I mean, maybe they're opposed to Force users in general, right? And so because the Jedi are the only ones that are around right now, they know that they need to kill. That's what he needs to do. And at some point, his ultimate goal is to extinguish the Force in some way. Now, again, I know people are going to argue you can't do that. It's a cosmic force and all that stuff. But
Right.
he doesn't know that. They don't know that. Maybe there is something there. Maybe they're just trying to keep that neutralized in some way. And they see Force users as like the mutants of this universe, where they need to be suppressed and they need to be extinguished and killed, eradicated. But anyway, so your thoughts on the suffering that people go through in order for Force powers to be suppressed by the Jedi?
Yeah, I really thought it was telling that it was it was the women in the family who passed down this ruthlessness of how to, subjugate and to just control a Jedi, or to, minimize their ability. And where you were going with, resisting using the Force. I mean, this is right out of High Republic Adventures, right? Where they're on Trimount 4 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The Padawans, yeah. And so Marchion Ro is there, and this culture, even if they have Force users, it's basically frowned upon, and it's
right.
I mean, it's like hunting witches, basically, of sorts. That's the type of image it gives you. And if you are found to use the Force, I mean, they ostracize you. I mean, it's not good, and they don't believe it's natural. They believe these things are, I don't know, just unnatural. And this is the culture that Marchion is going to talk to. And apparently one of the elder people, are the ones that he needs for some sort of information. We don't really know what they're doing
yet. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we figure we'll learn here in the next few issues what exactly is going on. But again, it speaks to that, though. Is this a type of culture that, that he came from? That this is important, and maybe this is part of his line. I mean, we don't know anything about these folks, except they had a very strong Force user, younger girl there with them. And for context, there was an emergence that happened over this system, and so the Yoda and them were the only ones who were close by, so they went for assistance, and they didn't really want it.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's this, I don't know if it's fear or it's not respect, but I don't know exactly what it is, except it's like the boogeyman or voodoo, they just don't keep that stuff away from here. You leave all that stuff. It's like Uncle Owen all over again.
Right.
You keep all that wizard crap. Right. Yep. Yeah. You keep all that stuff over there on your side of the desert.
Yeah, and we're only 2 issues in, so it's pretty early. So it's really hard to. I know I struggle right now to try to put any explanation as to where these folks are coming from and why they're so anti-Force users or anti-Force in general. But yeah, I mean, there could be something there, right? Like you said, there could be a link, and this is just part of his. Maybe that's part of his lineage in some way, or related to them in some way. But
it would make sense why they were allies at the very least.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the purple rod, and I think I'm going to come back to poor Mary Santeca here. So this is the rod that came up in Light of the Jedi towards the very end. It's one of the more interesting passages, and there's a lot of symbolism here. I'm going to ask for some thoughts on that here as well. But it says, Marchion Ro reached inside his tunic and pulled out an object of stone and metal, a rod, 3 hands long, carved and incised with symbols: screaming faces, fire, chains. Right, so those are the 3 things: screaming faces, fire, chains. It looked as if it had been melted once and reforged. And as his hand touched the object, it began to glow a sickly purple color that somehow overpowered the star-bright lighting of the prison deck. And we'll get to the visual here in just as well. We can probably talk about it right now. Was it issue 2 of High Republic Adventures? There's a moment there where Yoda boards one of the Nihil ships that Marchion Ro is on, and he's kind of playing cat and mouse, hiding in the shadows kind of thing, and he stumbles across this crate, which seems like it's just kind of out in the open. So this may not be related in any way. I don't know. But, and this is all you got right here. So on the side here, what we're showing is him seeing the box. Yoda says, many secrets this ship contains. And the next panel over shows him opening it up. And he's got an expression of, like he's surprised to see what's in this box. and there is a purple light that is emanating from inside the box. That's really it.
And it looks like he's reaching in there too. So presumably he's touching it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So we don't know, like, because this is towards the very end of this comic, and the third issue doesn't come out for, at least of this recording, hasn't come out yet. It's got like 5 more days or something. We don't know if he took the rod or he touched it and something happened to him. We just don't know. It literally ends here, and you hear nothing, or there's no other reference to this purple light. How about that? I don't want to keep calling it a rod because I don't know what's in there, but it just seemed too coincidental, right? Too on the nose that we know that this thing emanates as purple because it illuminated the entire prison deck. And here we go, Yoda's opening a box and suddenly there's a big purple light coming out of it. So it just feels like it is. But then, like we were talking about before we came on the air, why is this thing just floating around in a ship? Does Marchion take this with him wherever he goes? And why is it just kind of out in the open that Yoda just happens to stumble across or stumble upon?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I don't know. I mean, why would Yoda not take it? Although it would be a bit large for Yoda to be able to hide this. So I'm assuming he left it. But he clearly has some sort of connection. He feels something with this. And man, they didn't give us anything. Like, like you said, there's like two thought or, two chat bubbles and then 2 visuals on the panel. And
right.
You really wish that he would have, given some sort of thing. Does he feel something from it? Does he, does he recognize something? What is it about this thing that is attracting his attention?
Yeah.
And we just don't know. I mean, and just the description of the rod, I mean, just being able to, when you touch it and it doesn't it doesn't ignite, right? Like a lightsaber or anything. It just illuminates.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a odd, if you really try to think about that, that's kind of an incredible like idea, trying to visualize how blinding this thing would be just when you place your hand on it. But the Forge and Reforge thing, we talked a little bit about there in Light of the Jedi, and this is one of those things of remaking it and each of the wielders potentially having some sort of influence on what they do. It's it's passed down, it's repaired, it's broken, it's whatever it is, it falls into the wrong hands. It makes its way through things, much like the Darksaber. This kind of MacGuffin type of idea potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But the skulls and the chains and the fire, though.
Yeah, screaming faces, fires, and chains.
Yeah, and there's a lot of there's some Sith visuals there, of course, right? And some from our quote unquote Star Wars of what we grew up with, but also just the Sith code as well, right? Breaking chains. We understand this, this type of mentality that they want to be free.
Mm-hmm.
And we know Marchion wants to be free from whatever he's trying to escape from. But again, you have to confront what you have. And so sometimes you just have to reach out and grab it. But did you have any thoughts on that? I'm really want to hear what you say about, or what you have to think about the screaming faces in particular. Because
I don't, well, yeah. And I don't really have a lot. I mean, screaming faces, I think of, okay, somebody's in pain, right? Is it the pain of the people that wield it? Is it the pain of the people that are, that succumb to this rod in some way? Does it have a power? Does it have the ability to cause the pain? It's really early, and I don't have a really good theory around it. The fire, the symbols of fire, I think of like Mustafar, right? That takes us back. That's an easy, direct, almost too obvious line back to something that is touted in the dark side. The fire itself, meaning, flames, things going up, things coming down. My guess is we're going to get more explanation on this. I don't think they would plant these seeds and not expand upon them either directly or indirectly down the road. So I'm pretty sure we'll get some explanation. But the chains is probably the more important, maybe the more interesting one, because if we keep talking about this, like you said, him wanting to break free and get away, but I just really question, like, is this a symbol that's been carried? Is this something that belongs in his family? Is this something that his family took from somebody like the Jedi, or took from the Sith, or took from Force users to use against the Jedi? He's been holding on to this for some reason, right? It's important to him. It sounds like there's probably some practical use to it. And if this really is a thing that Yoda touches here, and it's something that maybe it's something he can't touch, right? Maybe because he is a Force user, he's not able to touch it. He's not able to pick it up. Maybe it suppresses, the maybe it suppresses Force abilities. And when Yoda's, got too close to it, he realized this and had to back away and left. And maybe that's how Marchion Ro has kind of an advantage against the Jedi a little bit later. Again, these are all speculation and theories on my part, right? But there's definitely got to be something behind it in why he would be holding on to this. And, it's going to play, I think it's going to play a huge part in the overall storyline at some point.
Right. And what kind of magical properties does it have? Because I mean, if you reach out and touch something and it glows just by your presence, is it something specific to Marchion Ro? Or is it just anybody touches it, it glows? It seems like maybe anybody does. Or is it anybody that has Force sensitivity? And maybe Marchion does have some level of Force sensitivity or something. Or maybe because he's near, maybe because he's near Loden that it's able to be activated. I mean, you could speculate in a bunch of different ways that are pretty interesting to kind of go down those rabbit holes with. But what, like you said, what is so special about this? Is it just a symbol? Or is it truly a device of some sorts? Maybe not a weapon, but a device. And maybe is this something linked to the Drengir? Because when we look at it, we want to pull the High Republic flagship comic in. We've been introduced to the Drengir finally, and you look like meat. Is what the Drengir can only say one word. It's just meat. It's very odd.
Well, it's weird. In the comics, that's all they say. In Into the Dark, they have full on conversations. They carry blasters. They're way more advanced than they appear in the comic book. But that's a good. I'm glad you brought the Drengir up, and I don't mean to kind of take over this part here, but there was we're talking a lot about suppression of the Force, and Into the Dark. One of the main, again, I'm going to spoil something, so if you haven't read it, I apologize in advance. But it's been out for almost over a month now. So there are these idols, like these statues that are sitting on the space station, and these idols, these statues have been put there not by the light. So they've been put there for to keep the Drengir in check. So these statues have like a Force ability, and because they've been placed on the space station, the Drengir that have been trapped on the space station can't really do anything. Like it's suppressing them completely to the point, because they are dark side sensitive, right? They emanate a lot of dark side power. And I'm not saying they can Force choke and all that stuff. They in their core, they're a dark side presence of some sort, right? Think of like the dark side. Think about the tree on Dagobah, just alive. It's kind of what they are, right? So these statues are there, and they've been put there to suppress it. One of the cool things you find out was they weren't put there by the Jedi. They were put there by the Sith. These things were at the Sith felt like these guys are too much, right? So that tells you a lot about the Drengir right there, right? So much that they found a way that they had to contain them. They couldn't overpower them. So they figured, okay, we'll just put these statues in here, and that'll be enough to keep them in check, and we don't have to worry about it as long as nobody ever touches these things. And of course, the Jedi touch them, and that's what causes the Drengir to escape, and yada yada yada, right? But so this is not. I guess what I'm saying is it's not unprecedented that we would have something like this, or anything really, an artifact of some sort that would be able to suppress the Force in some way, or prevent somebody from using the Force, or be sensitive, or have a Force user sensitive to it. And so that's kind of where a lot of this is the basis, I think, at least for this crazy theory, is coming from.
Right, and in the High Republic comic, we do seem like they have the tentacles going in the different orifices and whatnot, and they seem to have some sort of mind influence even over Jedi, and the Jedi are very susceptible to whatever influence the Drengir have. And so, but anyway,
they do, and by the way, it does come up in Into the Dark as well. Okay. One of the Jedi characters is kind of been mind influenced by one of them. So they do have dark side abilities. We just don't know to what extent. Outside of that, right. So far, I think that's the only thing that we've seen.
Right. Yeah, and we have 2 or 3 characters that are visually changing the way that they behave and things like that in the right. comic. And very gruesome in some kind of ways. But to kind of bring it all back, though, I mean, will be interesting to see what they do with this thing, and when will they, when is it appropriate for it to surface, and in what material? And it seems like the next best material we probably have is probably the comics, since he's in them. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll learn a little bit about it there, but I hope it does resurface and get some maybe more, a little deeper backstory when we get into one of the other books that comes out later this year.
So so this next line is really a continuation. I know we probably spent way too much time on that one, but it is a continuation. I think we've covered some of this, but it's he says this thing, meaning the rod, the purple glowing rod. This thing was almost as fully to blame for what happened to his ancestors as the Jedi. So okay, right there, let me pause. So that he's directly saying the Jedi are responsible for what happened to his ancestors, right? That's clear now.
Right.
But he's also blaming the rod. But that was an old story, and this was a new time. He could accomplish what they had not. So he could accomplish what his ancestors, could not. Again, they don't give us really much more context other than that. It could mean, conquering the Jedi. It could mean something else, right? We just don't know. But it sounds like they were trying to accomplish something. It could be killing the Jedi. It could be abolishing the Force itself, like we've talked about. But I like the fact that he said the rod was responsible for what happened to his ancestors as much as a Jedi. So even though this is something that he's coveted, he's using, he's got it, he's been keeping it for a reason. Maybe it was melted by his people and reforged, and they finally got it back. And maybe they were responsible for the melting down of it, trying to destroy it in some way. But yeah, something happened to his ancestors. So I think the big question is like, what happened to them, and how did the rod have any impact here? What literally.
Right. And maybe it's one of these idols that the Sith did, and maybe it does have something to do with the Drengir, and it's all connected. And that's how they'll be able to actually team up.
You think the Drengir and the Nihil are going to team up?
Maybe. That would pose a pretty serious threat to both the Republic and, do we want this kind of triangulation of conflict in a story like this? Is that something you would like to see, or is it, no, I'd rather them kind of maybe be at odds, or maybe they can't control the Drengir, but they're more or less on the same side?
I think I can see a story where Marchion and the Nihil think the Drengir are helping them, or have forged a bond, or a partnership so far. And again, we're very early. I just don't see the Drengir being the kind. I don't see them being the being able to negotiate a deal and do. They're just, all they want to do is and it's very clear in Into the Dark. Their whole purpose in life is to conquer the galaxy. That's it. That's all they want to do. They want to conquer the galaxy, and they want to eat meat, and everything that's not a plant, they'll put in their mouths. So they really, and they don't have. They're not like they're high functioning. They can talk. At one point, again, there were some that were carrying blasters. So they're pretty. They're crazy, really, is what they are. So again, based on that, I can't see them partnering up. I don't know what the Nihil would have to offer them, I guess is what I'm saying. But they may, right, just to kill the Jedi or to get rid of the Jedi first. But I don't think they're gonna stay in any kind of a lasting partnership or be amicable to the Nihil in any way.
Right, and maybe the idol though is a way to control them in some way. But we've labored on that one a bit long, so we can move forward. But yeah, it's interesting to see what we're going to do with this device.
Yep. Okay, so this is not a direct quote, but this was something that popped up. And so on the left-hand side, for anybody listening to the podcast, I've got a panel from the same, was it issue 2, right, from High Republic Adventures. And there's a moment in here where Yoda decides that he's going to, the Padawans are fighting the Nihil, and Yoda takes it upon himself to head into the main ship. And eventually he finds that rod, or the box that's got the purple light in it, right? But just before he boards the ship, there's a moment here where Marchion is looking down and sees Yoda. He sees Yoda from far away, and he stops and says, "Is that?" And there's a question mark. And then the guy that's with him says, "Sir?" And he's like, "No." Like he can't, almost like he can't believe it. Like this, right, phantom figure from his past, or something from his past, has suddenly crept in, and he books it into the ship and says, "We got to get out of here." Right. And Yoda gets on the ship, and that's where they don't meet or interact at this point, or any point thereafter. But I guess the question is, okay, so one, he recognizes Yoda specifically, which is very possible, although he's supposed to be far enough that he can't really figure out who it is exactly. But if you've seen one Yoda, you've seen them all, right? They all look the same. And then Yeah, or using two, right? So either he recognized Yoda specifically, or he recognized the race. Maybe it is like a Yaddle. I've got a picture of Yaddle up here. She's probably around. I don't know what she's doing. She hasn't popped up just yet, but she's at least old enough to be alive during the High Republic era. But there is something about, again, either Yoda himself or this race that scares him, and it's not the Jedi, because at this point he's already been talking to the Jedi. He's made some threats. I mean, he's not. The Jedi are not really a threat to him. Like, he doesn't see them as a huge threat. I mean, he respects them and he wants to kill them and all that stuff. But that's not why he's saying is that. He's saying is that because in this panel, this Yoda character figure directly came into scene and it freaked him out. So
yeah, he uses Yoda's name actually, a page or two later.
Oh, does he? Okay, great. I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah, he knows exactly who it is. And yeah, it's Panic. He clearly has had run-ins with him before. Now, what was interesting is it doesn't appear that Yoda recognized him, or at least we haven't been given that yet. Maybe it'll come out next issue, though. But it was clear, yeah, he recognized him, and he knew what kind of trouble they were in, and they lost track of Yoda, I think is what happened. That's how he snuck on the ship as he was kind of making his way around. But yeah, so whatever happened with Marchion and his dad, I mean, it seems like Yoda was there for it. And, and how we talked about, like, is Yoda responsible for something? And I think some of the writers got together on the High Republic show, and they curbed some of that stuff. It's not Yoda's fault, for a lot of things that happen and that type of thing. But, was Yoda present? Was he, what was their objective if they were doing all of these things that, and clearly he left an impression, and it could just be that he's a very recognizable, species, but clearly Yoda left a very clear impression to where he actually learned his name.
Yeah. There's like a crazy theory in here that his ancestors were at war with this race of Yoda, and that's why the Yoda are gone, right? Maybe it was them that killed them all off and left them to just a few left. At the same time, left just a few left for Marchion's family. And because they were naturally gifted in the Force, most, if not all of them, were Force users. And that's why he's against, Jedi. Maybe they were all practicing Jedi. They were a race of Jedi, if you will, right? I don't know. That's, again, me just completely making crap up at this point. But something scared the crap out of him here with Yoda for sure. So, okay, it was a neat little thing. I'm hoping they expand upon that in the High Republic Adventures a little bit more. Okay, so the last, we'll probably just spend a quick 15 minutes on this, and we'll call it at 1:30. But there, we've touched on a lot of different things. So I kind of want you just quick thoughts on possible groups or sects or something that that his family came from. Right, we want to speculate now on where he came from, what were his origins, and we'll start with one that I think would be interesting. Somebody that was part of a Jedi. Maybe Marchion Ro and his family were Jedi. That would give him, and they were exiled. Maybe they weren't Sith, but maybe they were, dark Jedi in some way. People that practice the dark arts or practice a neutral path. We can bring in the gray Jedi if you want at this point, which, although we'll talk about a little bit with the Guardians of Yavin here in just a minute. But likelihood that Marchion Ro's family were Jedi, and is that something you'd be interested in seeing and hearing more about?
I think likelihood that they're Jedi seems pretty low. Now, if we wanted to say, were they weaker Force sensitives and maybe cast out from the Order or rejected from the Order, I think something like that might be plausible.
I like that, yeah.
Because at least you have a connection between them. Again, we've speculated a little bit of some of the other things that might be, but I think with Jedi, it's probably going to be a very low likelihood that they have that, but clearly there's some sort of connectedness between them. And so I could definitely see where maybe they had some sort of relation. I mean, maybe they were the janitors, I don't know, but I like the idea that maybe they were just rejected from the Order, and then you get rivals, and that type of thing explodes, and you have border wars, effectively.
All right. Yeah. And I'm with you. I mean, it's intriguing, but at the same time, I don't know that this is like my favorite theory, because it doesn't really add a whole lot of depth. I mean, it's interesting to kind of see why somebody would have that much hatred for the Jedi if that's where he came from. I think that's probably the more appealing piece of it. But it seems to too simple for me, I think, more than anything. But all right, so here's one, and this is again another probably obvious explanation, or one that you could put a lot behind it, given how much we know about the Sith themselves. But could his family be the last of the Sith? Maybe and I don't want to change Legends history, but maybe they didn't refer to themselves as the Sith, or they were some again dark side users that were related to the Sith or spawned from the Sith. I've got pictures up here of like Bane and Revan. Maybe they were Revan Knights. I think that would be really cool to call back to the Revan Knights and the followers of Revan. That would be a way to kind of canonize them and give them a chance to be fleshed out a little bit more. But the Sith certainly knew how to, they knew what the Jedi were weak against. They knew how to attack them. They knew how to, cause pain upon them, how to stop mind tricks, right? The Jedi mind trick or the Jedi mind touch. So this makes sense, right? It makes sense that it could be somebody from a Sith, but is this, again, something that you'd be interested in seeing more about?
Again, probably not, because we're not getting any inclination that they're Force users. But again, connectedness to them is, I think, again, something that could be explored. We saw acolytes in Rise of Skywalker, right? So we know that the Sith used people around them to carry, to do tasks and whatnot. And everybody was a Force user back in the grand scheme of things, right? There were other people, and you had different levels of Force use. And so were these people, keepers of the Sith, the Sith texts? I don't know how you say that with all the excitement that you get. Or the Jedi texts.
Sith texts.
Right, the Sith texts. It doesn't work.
No,
but
it doesn't. Yeah.
You start saying really inappropriate words. But so is it something like that? Could it be tangent? Could they have a connection to them? I mean, again, I hope it's not they worked for them or something like that, but
right.
They actually lived by them. They lived with them. They were amongst their, the crew. And again, do we start to see a different side of the Sith as well? And because they toyed a lot with that, at the end of Legends, but not that means much.
Yeah. One that I think is probably far more interesting for me is the Night Sisters.
Yeah.
Right. We know they're in tune with the Force. They're probably more in tune with the dark side. Well, they are more in tune with the dark side. They have a different spin on it, right? They're more of the magic of Star Wars. But that would be, if anybody knew how to cause the Jedi pain, it's these ladies, first off. Going back to the line of, being taught by his grandmother, right? They're a matriarch society. It makes sense that the mother, the females in the family would be the ones that are passing down the techniques to, attack the Jedi, suppress them, defend against them, that kind of thing. And, they're, again, because they're in, you can see they've got weapons. They use weapons that are use kyber crystals or have some kind of force ability, going back to his rifle, if there's a direct connection there. But yeah, this one's a little bit more intriguing to me just because, we certainly got a lot from the Night Sisters in the Clone Wars series. I don't want to say that there's not a lot out there, but because there really is. But down the line, what is their history during here? What are they doing? They've already been referenced in the Justina Ireland's book. What was the name of that one now? Sorry.
Test of Courage.
Test of Courage. Yeah, they did make mention of the Night Sisters, so we know they're around. So it could be that, and it's a very quick reference. It's not like they get into the Night Sisters by any means, but they just kind of name drop them. So they are around, and I don't know. I think this would be a kind of an interesting take to kind of see what they were doing around this time and tie it back to Marchion Ro. Still not my favorite, but what are your thoughts?
I think that would be fun. I mean, when you talk about who would be able to imbue an object with special abilities or special powers like he's holding, I mean, then purple, not green, I guess. But I mean, it's still, this is a group that it would make a lot of sense that there would be some sort of sorcery that went into whatever this object is. And I really I hadn't really considered the Night Sisters until you popped this up. And I think this would be really fun to have some sort of connection to them. It seems very, very unlikely, I think. Like you said, clearly they've got at least what we saw in the Clone Wars, they had a very, clear imagery with them with the white skin. I don't know if that seems to be natural for them, I guess. But again, this could have just been a certain clan with wherever they're at this timeline. But I think it's a lot of fun. And you get the magical reference to it, which we know the Sith have played with as well, because we know Palpatine learned from Talzin and stuff. So I think that's a really fun connection. I'm actually, you got me excited about this one. Like this one's fun to think about.
Yeah, it is. And I'm not saying that he's he's from Dathomir or that's his race, because he clearly isn't. I'm just trying to think where they got, where were they trained? They could have had an alliance with the Night Sisters at some point, and they learned some of these techniques from them in some way. But yeah, I think it'd be cool to kind of poke around with that one and bring them back. I had the Guardians of Javin. So for anybody that's not familiar with the Guardians of Javin, don't be sad, because nobody is. The Guardians of the Javin are a quick name drop in the same novel. In fact, it's in the same sentence as the Night Sisters, and what they're doing is they're talking about dark side users, and they mentioned that there's hold on. To be fair, he doesn't say dark side users. He talks about force users that have fewer rules, is how they're defined, right? And so they mentioned the Night Sisters. They mentioned the Guardians of Javin. It could be nothing. It could be just one of these references, like some of the ones that were dropped in the Dooku novel as well. We've seen nothing from some of those yet. I'm hoping we will. But yeah, I mean, it could be. And I've got a picture right now. I'm showing the boy band here. The
rival boy band to the
Knights of Ren, because they are kind of in that same boat, right? They're force sensitive. They're not Sith. They are very much leaning towards the dark side. So I don't know. We could even speculate that maybe they're the Ren, the ancestors. He's an ancestor of the Ren that we see in the sequel trilogy of some sort. But again, it could just be a force sensitive group in some way that's at odds with the Jedi and the Sith. Maybe they are the neutral ones, the gray ones in some way, and were killed or obliterated by either the Sith and or the Jedi.
Right. And what's fun about the Knights of Ren coming into it, what we see in Rise of Skywalker, again, maybe it's a completely different visage when you go back in time, 250, 300 years. Right? They weren't just 4 or 5 of them. There were a legion of them, or they were a society, or they were something like that. So there's a lot of different things you could do with it. And I like the idea of it. It's something that you can tie, and you can have kind of a big reveal, if you will. I don't know how big of a reveal or drop that would be for some people, but I think if you do it right, it could be a very cool connection, depending on what it actually means in that context. They'd have to really explain what it means in like to be a Ren, which we really never got in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah, and just I want to be clear about something, because I know it's very easy to go, oh, here we go again with Snoke, and it has to mean something. And this is just, we're just having fun here. If it turns out to be, like a Rey nobody, it's there's probably your Marchion Ro theory sucks shirt somewhere already out there, right? But it's, it sounds like, again, the reason why we want to do this, because there was a lot of stuff that was dropped. And unlike the sequel trilogy, I really think they're gonna follow through on a lot of this stuff because it's already been planned out, which is great. So I think this is good. This is good conversation to have, and at least gets you thinking about some different things. So, but it would be cool to kind of see something like that.
It doesn't help when the authors come out and tell you that they did drop red herrings, and there are red herrings in the book. It really doesn't help matters for folks and for folks in our circles and stuff.
But we turned this into an hour and a half show, though. So you're welcome. Yeah. All right. So this is the one that we've probably talked about a lot. Maybe not the most. We've probably talked about the most, but probably not the one that I like the most. The Mandalorians. And I think for all the reasons we've already talked about, I don't think we really need to rehash all of that. But this one does make sense to me. It feels like this really could be one of a clan of Mandos, or his ancestor is the Mandalorian that we talked about going into earlier last year when we talked about the Mandalorian and going into season 2. But yeah, this would be cool. I would, and I think you nailed it. I mean, that mask that he's got, the helmet, is looks really similar to a Mando helmet.
It does. I mean, and that's from the comic, so it is presumably real, and that's what it looks like. We get, Marchion makes a comment about his name, right? Of, my name was or is, and then he stopped short. That doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
I mean, and that's what we're referencing for folks that might not remember from a couple episodes ago. But that pause and that it might very well be a misleading type of gesture, but there seems to be something there that does matter, and that it will click a light on for us and have some sort of meaning. And that's where the Knights of Ren is very potential, has a lot of potential. But that's also where Mandalorians might also come into that, and especially if there's some sort of family name that we might recognize. Please don't let it be Skywalker. But I mean, it's just right.
It's not
Palpatine. But,
no, it's not.
But yeah, right. But I mean, or maybe we're going to establish a new dynasty, or a new name that really becomes synonymous with this era.
Yeah, and I think so. That's a great segue. I don't know if you did that intentionally, but the name that I think has been pretty dominant in the High Republic, and one I think this is the more interesting theory, probably my favorite, is that he is a San Tekka of some sort, or what the San Tekkas were in some way, or I worked with them in some way. That would explain why he has such access to the paths and the technology to be able to make the jumps that he does. It would explain how he got his hands on Mary San Tekka and why she's been encased in that poor thing that she's just kind of sitting there suffering. But this is we got in the High Republic show that just came out a few days ago. They did a San Tekka animation sequence thing, like a 1 minute clip on them, and it has this picture here where it just kind of shows what's his face? Not Lars San Tekka. What's his name? Lars San Tekka. Lars San Tekka. Lars San Tekka. They've got a picture of him, and it mentions that they've got a long history of San Tekkas that are, they were the kind of the pioneers. They're the ones that charted all of the galaxy, or they were the forefront at charting and mapping out the galaxy. But it could be, it could be. This one's very interesting. Like, and I think there's a lot of layers of horribleness, if you will, in it, that he would do something like this to his family, right? Cross his family in this way and do something like that to Mary, and do something like that to his father. And, it is probably the more interesting one for me, but how about you?
I agree with you. In the San Tekka family, all of a sudden I want to understand a lot more about what it is that all goes on with this family, and where the connections are. Why does Mari have this ability? This family comes from a lineage of explorers and wayfinders and pathfinders. And those were intentional drops, because who knows, maybe they were the ones who helped construct some of these objects too, or to be able to chart these paths. And because they are the pioneers, they are the ones that do it. And it would make a lot of sense that the paths are their creation of sorts, and they've just not acknowledged this, or maybe there was some secret thing going on, but that they would have a connection to it. I don't know that he is a San Tekka. I can almost see them as rival families, though.
Yeah, or maybe the San Tekkas at some point at the height had these guys as slaves and used them for, I don't know what yet, but breaking free of the San Tekka family clan and them being almost like the Hutts, right? Like this a gangster group, but seen as the good guys and all the good they were doing. And people turning a blind eye to all the horrible things that were happening to the people that they enslaved in order to do this mapping and stuff, right? There's a story there. And, he's got a vengeance, not so much against the Jedi, but against the San Tekkas because of what they did. And the Jedi, he knows, are going to be the ones that are to come immediately to protect them. So he's got to extinguish those first before he can, really go after the real threat, not the Jedi. Or maybe the Jedi came and helped eradicate his family when they were at war with the San Tekkas, and so now he holds them responsible as well as the San Tekkas in some way. Sorry,
and we know the San Tekkas are trying to help with the Republic, making sure that, or the Republic is establishing new hyperspace lanes. They're solidifying those lanes, especially out to the Outer Rim, and that's where Marchion's concerned, right? Because they are starting to impose themselves closer to his, what he is considering his borders, or his area of, wherever they're at in no space, but whatever he's concerned about, they are on his doorstep in the Outer Rim. Mm-hmm. And like you said, maybe he's holding the San Tekkas responsible because they're the ones just sharing this knowledge out in the open. They sold it off to the Republic, and this is what happens. And they got greedy, and like you said, maybe there's some sort of family history. Like, man, we were really harping on like they were just the labor force in some way.
Well, it goes back to that slave comment, right? About him wanting to, escape in some way. That's, I mean, I don't know. It could be something else, but that's just the first thing that comes to mind because there's so much slavery in Star Wars. And it seems like it's always been there and will always probably be there. We saw it in all, prequel trilogy and all the way up to the sequel trilogy. So,
right. So the one thing that's interesting about this though, is that when the husbands were discussing and they said that she can't be alive, right?
mm-hmm.
That seems unlikely.
Right.
And they were talking about Mari. And so when I think about that and they mentioned her, but didn't really mention Marchion or maybe his dad, I mean, maybe they think they're dead too, but wouldn't that have been some sort of connection if there was a strong enough connection there? It seems like they would know that if they were thinking of her. Of course, but Mari may have been an anomaly in the family and just very special. And that's just the one that they focus on. And they recognize the behaviors and they recognize what was at least possible, even if it was really before their time when they were maybe kids or what their parents or grandparents told them.
Maybe, yeah. I almost, it could also go back to what we said earlier, where they were free, but somehow they still had to hide themselves. They had to hide their deaths. They had to hide, behind masks. And so for, the current Sentekas to see that, they see the Nile, but they don't put two and two together that, these are the same people that took Mari, or these are the same people that we were at war with. Maybe those generations it's so far back in, ancestry that it's not clicking for them, but that could explain why he says that, I wanted this is not how it was supposed to be, right? I'm still having to wear a helmet, and when he makes that gesture to it. So,
right.
Okay. Let's see. And then I'm only got a couple more here. So the Amaxian warriors, it's not, I got a picture of Snoke up here. Because, the Amaxian warriors or the Amaxines, they don't refer to them as Amaxian warriors in the High Republic. That's the term that's given to them in Bloodlines. And so we won't get into the history because we're way out of time. But these guys were an ancient race of people that were eventually killed by the Drengir. Okay. They were like the big cheese in the galaxy. They were the rulers. They built the space station that I'm going to show a picture of here on the right-hand side. This is the space station that came up in the Kylo Ren comic. And Snoke was hanging out here. Like Snoke, this is his place. This is where he's living prior to the events of The Force Awakens. And this planet and the space station and what you see here, the metal, with the exception of the vines and stuff grown on it, this technology was developed by the Amaxines. So again, they were this ancient race of people. They were conquerors. They had these really incredible technology. And the Drengir showed up at some point, we don't know how, and killed them all. Like, they're done. Killed them, and they've never shown up. Later on, they show up again. The Amaxine warriors come back a little bit later. I think they're in spirit, but I don't think they're direct descendants of them. But it got me thinking of, okay, so what if maybe they're related to the Amaxines, or maybe there's going to be more there. It would be cool if they could find a way to tie this into Snoke, so that the Snoke that at least is maybe around or in the High Republic actually has something behind him other than, the one that's later. And they can be two different people, right? That we know that's a clone. And the reason he was there was to allow Kylo Ren to kind of grow and become something more that we got in the very end of Last Jedi and of course in The Rise of Skywalker. But, if we go back to the original Snoke before he was cloned, before he was Palpatine's puppet kind of thing, and maybe he was somebody, maybe he was a descendant of the Maxines, or maybe he's a descendant or some way related or directly connected to somebody like a Marchion Ro. I don't know. Thoughts?
I don't really have anything to add to that one, man. You nailed all of that one. There's that. Right. That is interesting, though. I'm not against having some sort of Snoke reference, because, quite honestly, he got shortchanged so much, and then the sequel, a lot of build up and not as much payoff, and so it would be kind of cool to see this come back. I don't know if it's maybe Snoke specifically, but maybe we'll get a definition of a race or something. But I'm all right with this, and I mean, I'm with you though. I would like to see the connection at least with the planet and what we see here with the Drengir, because I think that is likely to be dropped as well. Like, Charles Soule loves doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and like they went to great lengths to do this. This comic came out last year, early last year,
maybe
2 years ago. I don't even know. I don't know what year we're in now, but But yeah, I mean, this was they started planting these seeds, so it feels like a waste if they put that in a comic this so old, so long ago now, and then tie it back to the novels now, which could just be, oh, let's find a way to repurpose this thing. But I do like the fact that they've done it, and it feels like maybe there's going to be more to it, and there's going to be a direct connection to those things. So we'll see. Okay, the last thing is more about looking forward. There's been a lot of comparisons to the Nile and the Cloud Riders, and I know they look alike in a lot of ways, especially with the helmets and stuff like that. And I'll just, because we're short on time, I'm just going to cut to the chase. My crazy theory was that in Tempest Runner, we get the first inklings that Lorna D is starting to change and is not really liking the way things are going. She's got a rebellious streak to her already. She wants to separate herself from the likes of Marchion Ro and the Nile. At the same time, she's not really for what the Republic stands for, the High Republic stands for. She's not really into that. And it'd be cool. In my crazy theory is that at some point she breaks away, and that is, really early on, kind of the beginning of this rebellious group that would eventually become the Cloud Riders, and they just inherit the whole, aesthetic of wearing helmets and that kind of thing. So is there a redemption arc in here that I'm saying? Yeah, I'm saying there's a redemption arc for Lorna D in some way, not fully, but enough that she breaks away and kind of does her own thing as a rebel, which eventually would become the Cloud Riders. There we go. So that's how I'm tying the two together.
Yeah, and if we want to take a more pragmatic approach, and the artists have talked about this a little bit, and we know that Star Wars reuses designs, and that they borrow and they want this connected tissue that has to look like Star Wars, and so we know that they reuse things that maybe was on the cutting room floor and whatnot. So it doesn't necessarily mean something, but it is an interesting theory that there is enough visual reference there that they do align fairly well, that you could make some jumps there. Now, that's a pretty far jump from Lorna D, where she's at now, to freedom fighters 250 years later, or really, I guess, closer to 300 years later.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time
There's a lot of time
to make that connection in any kind of way. And I don't really know how you do that except call them Cloud Riders. I mean, Cloud.
Yeah, there you go.
But remember, Marchion Ro is trying to eliminate this whole cloud and strike stuff.
I'm making arguments here, but maybe she was so attached to it, she actually liked the structure of it and thought it was cool, right? She named her ship after herself. I don't know. Maybe she's like, yeah, we'll keep that. Whatever. Since he's not using it anymore, I'll just kind of continue to run with it.
Right. I mean, we're assuming that they've eliminated all that stuff. I imagine there's still a tier system of some sort, but yeah, maybe so. Maybe, and I guess Tempest Runner, I'm with you. I think we're going to find out what really motivates her and what drives her, and where her true loyalties may or may not lie as we get through that audiobook. And I think a lot of it's going to be historical aspect of Lorna D. I don't know that we're going to get a whole lot now, but we might get enough now with flashbacks and kind of going back and forth, like we've seen some of these books do, especially like Dooku did this a lot, right?
Yeah.
To be able to get an idea of who she was influence who she is now, and what decisions she's making now based on what happened in the past.
I like it. It probably won't happen, but it's fun to talk about. It's fun to speculate on. All right. Before we get out of here, just a quick bit of feedback from our buddy Darth Went. Says, thanks, Albert and Jonesy, for the first class breakdown. He's referring to the Light of the Jedi, the 5-part series that we did. All 5 parts, you both knocked it out of the park. Loved every minute. So thank you for that comment and the feedback.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you.
I'm glad somebody liked it.
I know, right? Well, besides you like everything we do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, a couple things. So again, if you are interested in joining us on Discord, I know we had questions last week and we couldn't answer them quick enough. eargluemedia.com/Discord. Also, if you're wanting to go look at the 10th year anniversary stuff that Albert was awesome enough to make a logo for, stickers, t-shirts, all that good stuff. And they look like this. The shirts are pretty good quality. And that's at eargluemedia.com/shop. So hopefully very easy to remember, and you can come out and check out the stuff. Everything goes back into the show. We don't keep it Albert's salary. We can't afford him anyway, so we just made him work for free.
Yeah.
And we work him like a
pro
dog.
bono
You're
work.
welcome.
Yeah, pro
right,
bono.
Yeah.
This
is why we have such long shows, because we just don't let him out of his cave.
That's very true. All right. Well, okay, we're going to get out of here. Any final words before we get out of here?
No, let's do it, man.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for joining us on the live chat, and we'll be back in just a few days for a full length episode. But again, reminder that tomorrow, Thursday, April 1st, we will be doing the Certain Point of View show with Dante. So look for that here very soon as well. We'll see you guys next time.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.